Welcome to a good morning, Wainimi Bay. It's Saturday morning, coffee time and donuts out at the patio, and we've got a really, really nice crowd today. So everybody say hi.
Hi.
As we go around, and we got Mr. Hensley taking the pictures. So we know that someone else is out on the patio with the video. But anyway, we're very privileged this morning to have a good friend of mine and one of our elected officials, Martin Hernandez. He'll tell you a little bit more about what he does so that I won't get it mixed up. But he's agreed to come here today, join us, and he really said, wow, he's looking forward to a nice community. He sees what this could be about. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Martin. He'll tell you all about what he's here, what he's trying to do, and basically there will be a question and answer. So if you have any questions, please feel free. Martin?
Thanks, Bob. Good morning, everybody. It really is my privilege to be here and being in your community. I got to tell you, it gives me goosebumps. I've got such a wonderful feeling in my heart right now to see such a wonderful community come together of seniors in Port Wainimi. It does my heart so good, and I'll tell you why. One of my first experiences as a young man was being in the military, in the Air Force, and I was a medic. And one of my favorite things to do as a medic, when I worked in the hospital, I worked in the intensive care, in the emergency room, worked throughout the hospital as well as drove the ambulances, was a lot of folks that came into the hospital were retirees or dependents of retirees. So a lot of folks like yourselves that were connected with the military. And the thing that always made me a little sad, to be quite honest with you, was a lot of them didn't have family that would come and visit them when they're at their most vulnerable time, when they're in an intensive care unit. And so I always found it such a pleasure to sit by their bedside and listen to their stories and listen to their experiences about life. And I learned so much as a young man about what I have to look forward to in life. And so to have a community like this where you can come out and socialize and share some coffee and donuts and some laughs and some trials and tribulations and some successes and new grandkids and whatever you care to share about, just does my heart good to know that there's a community out here that's supporting one another like that. So I'm going to try to keep it as brief as possible, a little bit about myself, my background, and then I'll give you that kind of political punch of what I'm doing these days. So I was born actually not too far from here on the other side of the base. If any of you were here long enough to remember Belinda Hospital, it was, yeah, great. Yeah, my mom, that's where I was born. She actually was seeing Dr. Lowe, if any of you remember him, from the Colonia area. That was my first doctor and her doctor when she was expecting with me, and so he delivered me there. And then we immediately, they had just bought a house in Ventura, so I grew up in Ventura. Graduated from Ventura High School, and it was right after that that I left to the military, trying to see if there was something I could learn out there, and that's when I became a medic, and I really enjoyed that. Really taught me a lot that still serves me today in terms of my respect for our military and our veterans and what our current active duty members of the military do today. I've got one son that's in the Army currently at Fort Gordon in Georgia. I've got another son that's about a year and a half out of the Marine Corps, but like they say, once a Marine, always a Marine. So, but he was able to use his VA loan and purchase a home. He lives in Tehachapi. I've got my other son who actually works civil service out at Edwards Air Force Base, supporting the test range out there for their airplanes and whatnot. So we've got a history of service in our family to the military and serving this country. And locally too, as you'll hear a little bit more about me. So went off to the military, came back, worked for some doctors here locally, Oxnard Orthopedic Group, just right down Ventura Road. I don't know if many of you remember Dr. McAtee, Dr. Giles, Roland, McLean. Wow, remembered all of them. So they worked down there, and they taught me how to be their assistant. I was putting on casts and helping them with all kinds of medical procedures in the office. Really enjoyed that. Then I had the opportunity to be a part of the family business. My dad was an immigrant from Mexico, down in Michoacan, Mexico. He came to the United States as a young boy, like a lot of immigrants do, to help support his family in Mexico. His name was Manuel Hernandez. And he came up, like I say, as a young boy, worked hard, sent a lot of money back to his mom and dad to help care for his brothers and sisters. He worked for a local company. Some of you see a lot of nodding heads in the history, so I'll continue with that. Coastal Growers on 5th Street, and he was their pruning foreman. Took care of all this, a large amount of the citrus that we have in our county by trimming the trees, and what that did was it helped provide the trees the ability to grow real quality, sun-kissed quality lemons, oranges, and avocados. And so he did that for a lot of years. When they phased that part of their operation out and went to strictly harvesting, he decided to ask my brother if he would do his contractor's license. By that time, my father had already gone to college, learned about our Constitution, got his citizenship, became a citizen of the United States. And so doing all that was an incredible role model for me about not just what this country has to offer, but how when somebody's really focused, they can not just take advantage of it, but be a part of it and contribute back to it. And by doing so, and starting that business, we employed about 120 employees a year, and so that fed a lot of families. And the one thing I noticed about my father was he treated every employee with dignity and respect, whether they were the newest one to the most senior employee, to the farmers that we took care of their ranches, including at home with my mom. And so that was an incredible role model for me, and that's what I try to emulate every day, is treating everybody I meet with dignity and respect, because I know we all deserve that. So fast forward to about 2008. County Supervisor Kathy Long, who's your supervisor currently for this area, Port Hueneme, Camarillo, South Oxnard, Fillmore, Piru, Santa Paula, was part of a committee that awarded some grant funding to Interface Children Family Services out of Camarillo to start a family resource center in Santa Paula, working with at-risk youth. And I had the privilege and opportunity to be the director of that program. We had about 16 staff that provided counseling, alcohol and drug counseling, family therapy. And I was really amazed at the great need in Santa Paula, where I live currently. You know, we were getting clients referred to us like that were in the first grade, that were running away from home, running away from school once they get there, and we try to figure out what was going on. And once our therapist got an opportunity to work with them, I don't know the details about what was going on. Only thing I knew is that by us intervening and helping that young person out, very oftentimes turned them back around, got them back on track in school, got them back in track in life, and so it was a very rewarding time for me. That's when I met Supervisor Long. Again, she was one of the people on the committee that funded that, voted to fund that program. And after about 3 years of working there, I heard that she had a need for a staff person in her office, and someone had given her my name as a referral. So I got a phone call from her one day about if I was interested in working in her office. I thought, what am I going to do working for a politician? I had at that point, had never even thought about doing that. I loved what I was doing. I was always focusing on trying to make a difference for others in the military, in the nonprofit sector, working with kids. So I thought, well, how's that going to happen in a politician's office? You know, we all hear, right, about that. And so until a good friend of mine said, well, Martin, maybe this is an opportunity for you to make a difference, continue helping out at a different level. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a try. So in 2001, I joined Supervisor Long's staff as one of her assistants, and covered primarily, because the district's so large, she has 3 of us that do the same kind of work that I do, and I covered the Santa Clara River Valley, which is Santa Paula, Fillmore, and Piru. And I cover all the agricultural issues, the criminal justice issues, land use issues, resource issues with regards to water and landfills and such. So the wide list of committees that I serve on for her to keep her informed about what's going on in her district. But I've been working with her ever since. About 6 years ago, I became her chief of staff. So I've been with her, I'm going on 16 years now. And as you know, part of the district that she covers is Port Hueneme. And I'll be quite frank with you, we've got a coworker, her name's Lauren Bianchi, and she's covered the Port Hueneme area primarily for Supervisor Long. And because the district's so large, and as her chief of staff, I do manage all the work in the office, but it's important that each person focus on certain areas so that they can keep the supervisor fully informed. So that's part of why I'm coming out to you today. I want to learn about what issues that might be of concern for you related to Port Hueneme. As I learn more about Port Hueneme and meet with some of the council members like Mr. Hensley in the back and others to learn about what issues are relevant to the city that maybe the county could assist in, if not, just so that I can become more intimately familiar with your community. So if there is ways that we can support you and or through networks that I have that I've created over the last 15 years, from the local, the county, the state, the federal level, that we can continue to access those resources to make your community even more beautiful or as beautiful as it is and maintain the lifestyle that you enjoy now. I'll give you 4 quick things and then I'm going to open it up for questions because I've already been talking too long. And that is, somebody have a flyer that they could hold up. So can I borrow that for a second, Darren? Thank you. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that these are in the back in the office or the little kitchen area. I brought these for you to take home with you. You can read a little bit more in detail about, thank you, dear, about some of the things that I think are really relevant and important to the county as a whole. Because as you may or may not know, Supervisor Long has announced her retirement. I was very saddened to hear it. I learned about it. I was the second person to learn about it after she told the chief executive officer for the county that she was going to retire after this term, which ends in December of 2016. And like I said, I was very saddened to hear that news. It's like the end of a marriage, right? Been with her so long. Still trying to process that. She's done some wonderful work in representing all of you in the entire district. And I thought, so after all those years of being with her, having such an incredible mentor, creating the incredible relationships I have with our county electeds, our state representatives, our federal representatives, and knowing the issues as well as I do from a regional perspective, that I thought I'd put that information, that operational information about how the county works, those relationships that I've built over the years to help continue that good work, to use and run for her office, frankly. So 4 of the things that I think are really important for me, and I believe from what I hear region-wide are, and not in this particular order, but you'll find them on that sheet, is first and foremost public safety. I mean, who doesn't like to feel that they live in a safe community, right? And I know that certain areas like Port Hueneme, for example, you have your own police department, but I know the sheriff's department provides services for contract cities such as Camarillo, Ojai, and others, but they also take care of the unincorporated area, and they are always there to back up local police departments when they have something large or they need some support. The sheriff comes in and supports them as well. So that, I'm not sure if you're all aware of the prisoner realignment. It's called Assembly Bill 109 that passed several years ago. So starting in 2011, they started returning prisoners early from state prison back to the counties and actually the cities of where they came from, because the state lost a federal lawsuit that said they were overcrowding their prison system and not providing the kind of health care and other care for those prisoners that they had by civil right to be treated with dignity and respect, even though they were prisoners. So what their answer to that was not building more prisons, but to release some of them early that had less than serious charges that they could then return back to their counties of origin so they could be supervised by the local county probation agency. So I've been on a committee for the supervisor where we've been having several agencies come together to talk about how that plan is going to work, what we're going to do with the money that the state gives us to not just keep an eye on them, but also try to help them with some skills, some work skills and other social skills so that they can go back to their communities, and hopefully many of them really just want to be there to support their families and have new skills so they don't reoffend and go back to jail. And if they're not reoffending and going back to jail, that means we have safer communities because there's less crime. Healthcare. Healthcare is important to me, important to all of us. Access for everybody, especially our most vulnerable populations. Folks with mental illness, seniors, homeless folks, veterans. Veterans deserve that as well after serving our country. Economic development's important to me as well. The county's been on a effort of trying to streamline permits for businesses that are trying to come into the county, as well as land use issues. And I'd like to make sure that the county continues those efforts so that we can make it easier for companies to come and establish themselves in the county, creating more jobs and creating more opportunities for not only our young people coming out of our university that we have in our county now, but for everybody. Resource management, natural resource management. We all know we're in a drought right now. You know, again, the state has come up with an idea, and I think it's a good one. They passed a law that just earlier this year in January where we have to create groundwater sustainable agencies that utilize all the groundwater basins in our county. We have several. We're fortunate in this county that we get most of our water from our ground. Some areas get some state water, but Fillmore, Santa Paula, Ventura, some parts of the Oxnard Plain, they tend to overdraft the groundwater. And what the state has told us, particularly now that it's really critical in some of these basins that are moderately to high risk, that these agencies come together and they create a plan that then has to be approved by the state of how we're going to manage that water for the next 20 years, which I think is a really good idea. I mean, water is the lifeblood of this planet. We've got a rich in agriculture, $2 billion a year agricultural business in our county. It creates a lot of jobs, and so it's really important that we take care of that. So with that said, there's more for you to read on that paper. Please take one home. Brought a lot of pens for you to use at your home. Please take those as well. And enough said. Please, any questions? Mr. Hensley.
Martine, what kind of motorcycle do you ride?
You got me. I'm a biker. Actually, I ride Victories, and it's probably rightly so. I mean, it's almost an affirmation, if you would. Seriously, when I always try to stay on a positive note, I'll tell you in 30 seconds why I ride my motorcycle. Besides just being the best cheap therapy ever, my son, who was the Marine, was being deployed to Afghanistan. He purchased a motorcycle and he said, "Dad, you need to get one so we can spend some time together." So I did, and it's the best thing I ever did. We took a lot of nice rides together, and he got me hooked again. I used to ride in high school, but I ride my motorcycle to work every day, and I really enjoy it. Like I say, it's good therapy. It's a good way to release the stress of being a public service. Yes, ma'am.
You know, the quality of water, the source of where Port Hueneme water is coming from, is there talk about that ever changing? Right now, we have horrible water. We used to have the best, and it's really doing harm to our, I can see the water fixtures. I can see problems that I've never had in a very short time, because we haven't had this new water for very long.
Yeah.
So what's happening with
Yeah,
that?
so let me tell you from my perspective as a Santa Paula City Councilman, because I failed to mention that I am on the Santa Paula City Council. I was elected in 2012. I'm currently Vice Mayor. We've done a great job in Santa Paula. I'd like to say we've balanced our budget every year. With regards to water, though, however, one of the things that you'll hear as we're in a drought and as our water table starts to drop. It's like if you have an aquarium and you just let the aquarium sit there. Not only is it going to build algae and such, maybe that's not a great analogy, but the more the water table goes down, the more concentrated whatever's in that basin gets. So the water quality tends to deplete, and the quality is less than if it were full and more diluted. Okay? So in Santa Paula, what we're looking at right now is we're looking at ways to maybe treat that water as we pump it out of the ground to give the residents some more quality water, because at the end, what happens with that water comes to your house, either goes to the dishwasher or your shower, to your drain, the toilet, or whatever, goes to the wastewater treatment plant. They treat it as much as possible, but there's still some things, chlorides, for example, salts, that need to be cleaned out of there before you can discharge it either in a pond or through some other outfall. The state monitors that, so if you don't get it to a specific quality, then you get fined. We're facing that in Santa Paula now. And so that's why we're looking at ways where we can improve the quality of the water.
Oh, Waimini's not getting groundwater though.
No, but
We are not, we
I
don't
understand.
have that groundwater source.
Right, so you're getting it from other areas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so,
they made some change to it, and that's what's wrong with it.
Yeah, most of our water, instead of coming from whatever agency it was, is now
Right.
coming from another
right.
source.
So I think maybe Mr. Hensley wants to chime in, being
Thank you,
local.
Martine. I'm going to be addressing the water issues when I take a brief minute after Martine's through.
Oh, okay, so you're gonna talk about that following me? Okay, so there you go. Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilmember. Any other questions?
Robert?
Well,
Yes,
my,
ma'am.
my question
Okay,
refers back to
sorry.
hers. Why, and he's gonna address it as well.
Okay.
Is the decel. Why don't we use our groundwater or other source water as a secondary source and build a desalination plant right here?
Yeah.
And what are you gonna do to help us get that, so that we're
Okay.
self-sufficient and we don't use Colorado water or any other source water?
Understand. No, that's a great point. And, you know, matter of fact, about a week ago, the governor's drought task force was doing a series of meetings in different communities to talk to representatives about ideas similar to that. And I would have to say that I would agree with you at this point. Matter of fact, I gave credit to my dad at that meeting. I'm going to give credit to him now. He shared that idea about 40 years ago. Why don't we just take all the seawater out there, turn it into drinkable water? We've got almost an unlimited supply. You know, the thing that today that makes that extremely challenging, I agree. I think if everybody in the county, we'll just say as an example, put in $5 to pay for a regional plant, to me, logically, it makes sense. Technically and legally, there's so many hurdles to overcome with regards to the Coastal Commission and others that have to review things like that. You've got environmental groups that are, okay, what if you suck up these endangered species through the pipe that you're pulling in the seawater from? So there's a lot of things. I would love to see it studied. It probably already has been.
Well, we need to do
But-
more than study.
Well, I mean, you can't really come to a bottom line of what the costs are gonna be and the feasibility basically of what it would be at the end, until you find out. That's the study.
Well, they're gonna expand the port, so
Right.
all that environmental impact's been done already there. So if they can get the port because it's generating revenue, then we should be able to get something that's gonna save lives rather than.
Right.
Why don't they scrap that bullet train down the middle of the country and use that to do so? Use that billions of dollars.
Because the
a
governor's
week.
gotta get back and forth.
I'm not gonna argue with you. Right? I think it's a great idea. I would love to explore it more, seriously.
I think we're getting into a lot of
Questions, yeah.
detail questions, so let's
Questions.
try and keep it so that it's still
When
the
I first
Saturday
moved
morning.
here about 5-6 years ago, the first time, our water sewer trash was like $75 every other month. And then we were given the choice of either passing this something to do law with the water, or it was gonna go up anyway. So now it's 200 and something every 2 months. What's gonna happen with this water shortage? Because we're hearing all over the country that the cities aren't making enough money because they're not getting the revenue from the water usage, and they're raising the rate. So what's gonna happen to us on that scale?
Right. You know, we had to do that in Santa Paula as well, because there's a certain amount of revenue you have to make to pay back the debt
Right.
that you incurred to build your wastewater treatment plant, for example. And so when people use less water, you're not making the same kind of revenue. So in order to kind of adjust that, the rates go up. I agree. I pay rates, and I'll tell you, the reason I even ran for city council was my wife kept complaining about the darn water rates and complaining about the darn water rates, and why don't you do something about it? And so that's why I ran for city council. There's some things that can be done, and other things are just inevitable to keep your credit rating okay with the city in case you need to borrow more money. You have to really address that debt ratio, and until
Well,
there's a
didn't
better way to
anybody
do it.
foresee that?
Of course, it happens everywhere. Every city's faced with the same
Oh, I know,
challenge.
it's all over the country. but-
Particularly in a drought, and so probably our best answer is to get some rain, and maybe it will help marginalize that a little bit, and minimize that, I should say. So,
So all of us that are part Indian should start our rain dance.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I think we're gonna have a lot of rain this winter, so we might not have any
We may have
water.
overdone
I don't know how much more time we have for questions.
Yeah, let's make this the last one so we could go back to socializing.
Going on, is the traffic lights, red lights, with cameras, and man, they're really out to get the seniors and so on. Unbelievable. And what they made them do is because you're over 72 or whatever, when you go, they had to take special school and all that stuff. First time ever I had. And the people, the way they were driving, they just zoomed right through the red light and everything else. And I just missed it by a hair, and the camera got me.
Oh, man.
And I decided not to protest it. I went to school all day. Unbelievable.
Still expensive though, isn't it? Even with the
Yeah, it was
school.
$750 ticket for that little
You want
red
your
light.
money.
But because you went to school, it cost me $440, I think it was.
And then it didn't go on your driving record as well,
Right, didn't go
right?
on the driving record.
Okay. Yeah, it's tough times. It's getting
unbelievable.
more expensive for everybody.
I think they're trying to make
empathize.
money.
I empathize, with that. And again, those are city decisions, and so what I would encourage you to do, if it's something you're not particularly happy with, within your city, that's your city council that needs to be spoken to about that, whether or not they want to continue that or not, and share your frustration and your limited income. But in terms of at the county level, we would only do that in the unincorporated areas outside the city limits, where there's not too
Yeah.
many signal lights. But if it's a city issue, go to your council.
Martine?
Yes,
I
sir.
really want to thank you on behalf of everybody here, okay?
Thanks, Bob. Thank you,
And
everybody, very
please
much for your time.
Stick around, everybody's sure gonna have some questions, but at least we'll be
pleasure.
around and having some,
My pleasure.
little bit more coffee and a lot of donuts.
My pleasure. Thank you, sir.